Hi, everyone. I know you're going to be thrilled to see Dr. David Clements again because we've had quite a few conversations now. Welcome, David. It's a pure joy to spend time with you. So, people have absolutely adored all of your sharings in the past, and that's why you're back here again today. It's such an incredibly exciting time of humanity's evolution. So, I think a lot of you listening will know David's past and background, but I will put all of the links for the conversations we've had in the past beneath this video. So you can go right back to the first one where David talked about being a theoretical physicist. He's got two advanced degrees in maths and physics at our most distinguished universities, or have been in the past, Oxford and Cambridge. And he specialized in string theory, and then his life changed quite dramatically. And he kind of threw away the textbooks and very high frequency galactic. Now an expert in living energy systems, living energy intelligent systems, and his work is really so pioneering and leading edge and spectacular. He has two different websites, one for the regenerative technology that he's constantly evolving to help humanity, and the other where he very generously, many of these are for free, shares live streams and profound meditations that people are finding life changing. And so I'll put both of those links below. You can join as a free Patreon, so you can listen to a lot of those live streams and meditations going forwards, but also go back in the library and access them as well. So, welcome, David. Great to have
Thank you, Pam. I love chatting with you, both, doing these interviews and also, as a friend as well. We've had some lovely chats and connections, and I'm, as always, just such a pleasure to come back and chat with you. So I'm really happy. And hello to all of your audience as well. Although I don't have a YouTube account, so I haven't I don't comment on or haven't replied to any of his comments. I do look through them, and there's some really lovely and very sweet and kind comments there. So thank you so much for those people that have been doing that, and it just shows me as well the information that my teams, my higher self source intelligence brings through, just how much that's touching people. And just before we begin, I'd just like to share that, that's such a beautiful thing. It's such a joyful thing that to see people get those, and I say it many times, there are aha moments, those things that just take them beyond something which they may have been stuck on for a while, and it just shunts them forward. It's such a magical thing to see that. So it's a great delight, and I hope you get wonderful things from this interview too.
well, I think it's fair to say you are thoroughly loved up by thoroughly loved up, but also I think what is so inspiring and joyful at a time of outer turbulence, and I know we're going to touch on this
Right.
in our conversation, at a time of great apparent chaos and outer turbulence,
Right.
and I talk about this a lot in my videos as well, it is so important to keep a very different point of focus of where we are headed. Remember that
Yes.
analogy
Yeah.
I used when I was doing that martial arts course, and we were being taught to split a builder's plank. And if you hit the builder's plank, you really hurt your hand. And
Right.
the thing was, the teacher said, and this was way back when I was in my 20s and didn't know anything about astrology then, but in my early 20s. But the thing was, we had to focus beneath the plank where you want to get to. And if you do
uh,
that, it's really easy. And I remember splitting three in a row and felt like Hercules. So
that's cool. I'm just having this really cool vision of you doing that.
yeah,
It's
I
sort of
did.
like,
I needed it actually on my 5 month travel. Anyway, that's another whole other story. But focusing on where we want to get to, and I hope this conversation with David will really help you keep that focus of where we are going ultimately,
Mm,
and that's so
yes,
important. So,
yes.
what we planned to do, David and I, was to talk about how we create our reality, and we're still going to do that, but perhaps with a slightly different focus. So I'd really like to start, David, because I know you did a beautiful explanation in a recent webinar with Jocelyn Starfeather about how we create our reality,
Right,
and
yes.
but also touch on the subject of plasma, because people are getting more and more interested in plasma, what it is, the part
Mm,
it plays, and as we move into greater malleability and fluidity in our reality, if you can kind of
mm.
help us understand how we
Yeah.
are shifting from this dense and concentrated and contracted state we've been in for so long,
Yes.
how
Yeah.
we understand how we create our reality for the betterment of all. Is that a good start point?
Yeah, no, that's yeah. There's a lot to we could certainly dive into there, and so to begin with, then, so the sort of classical physics definition of plasma is that you have gases, solids, liquids, all the usuals, and then when gases heat to a certain temperature, it becomes plasmic, or it becomes in the plasma state. But as you well know, is that you've written about the researcher David Bohm studied plasmas in detail, and he started to notice, and I believe that he was one of, if not the first person to see that plasmas exhibit very different behavior that was unexpected, and that was that they had a self-organizational character to them. Now, let's put that in contrast, because mainstream physics doesn't see anything in terms of particles, subatomic particles, atoms, collections of them in gases or plasmas as being anything other than just building blocks with certain characteristics which are mathematically defined and then behave in certainly, more or less predictable ways. But the idea that these could have a sort of intelligence about them, a consciousness, that they could be self-organizing, is certainly not there. And this is something which, I believe David there's some other work that he did as well, which was very pioneering. And, this was it wasn't very, I don't think it was very well received by, mainstream, which, those sort of things really aren't. Because it really is asking people to look at matter instead of being like sort of dead, unliving Lego-like blocks that you just assemble in particular ways and make, woo, I've made a something, or a something does this. It's now asking you to look at it as it's all a collective expression of a field, of a living, intelligent field that creates these particulate sort of aspects of itself in order to create and bind together and make structural forms. And one way I always explain this as an example, if you imagine, and I may have already mentioned this before, so this might be a repeat, but if you imagine an ocean and it's all continuous everywhere, there doesn't appear to be anything in it. But the ocean, the field, the source field, the ocean is alive. And then it suddenly decides, what happens if I just compress over here? Oh, hang on a second. Suddenly there's a clumping together, a focal point of energy, which appears to be a particle or an object. Oh, I'm going to do the same over here. And if you imagine a little bit like it decides to make little ice balls within itself, it's just suddenly spontaneously freezes over here, freezes over here. Now suddenly you've got this whole field full of these particularized aspects or focal points within the field. Now, what happens if they come together? Oh, that's cool. I can now make, subatomics, atomic structures, molecules, molecular structures, and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's all this fractalized way of, sort of different levels of compression of energy and focusing of energy to create forms with particular characteristics and behavior. And that's the other thing. So before we move on, one of the interesting things about this is that behind this, one of the things that my teams have made clear to me is it's within fields are a rich array of what I've come to call sort of intent codes or energetic codes. Now, those intent codes are in fields, electromagnetic fields. They surround structure or matter, as we call it. And so, when people eat food or they go out into the daytime and they experience the sun, people talk about codings coming from the sun. Well, I believe that's a very real thing. And this very intricate, very incredibly beautiful sort of living library of codes within, say, a photon or a packet or a quanta of light within what we call, light rays or a light field, are rich with these coded intent codes. And when you absorb them, you actually absorb the coding, and you can absorb that generative intent that comes to you. And similarly, in a way, you can also have a degenerative coding, which does the opposite, because we live in a world of polarity. Now let's come back to plasma for a second, because we're going to try and sort of interlink this a little bit. Now, the more compression you have on energy, the more dense and structural it perceives. It becomes very mechanical, it becomes very solid, because the compression is really high. But when you start to release the compression, now it's becoming more fluid, more morphic, its characteristics changes. Suddenly, the perception of it being mechanical and having very simple mechanistic attributes and qualities of how it behaves now changes. So with plasmas, that's a great example, because as the compression comes off and the quality of the energy of what's going on in there is changing, so does the behavior. And now, when I spoke before about under high compression, things appear to be sort of almost, we're going to say strange like, but almost deadlocked in a way. It appears like it's a lump of Lego just floating around, just dinging off another and just behaving in very simple ways. And there doesn't appear to be any kind of intelligent control or organization at all. But as the compression comes off and the quality of the energetics, the fundamentals inside what you would call a plasma change, now suddenly it opens up and living energetic qualities start to present themselves. They didn't go anywhere, they were already there. But the compression was so intense and the coding inside them for their behavior was such that they behaved and made themselves look like they were just dead mechanical, highly dense structures that just behave in very basic ways. And one of the things that, just from my experience before about meeting very advanced beings on ships, is that many of them had bodily structures, but they weren't as we would normally think of them. They had this immaculate glow. There was this living, it's very hard to find the words to describe it. It was just this living intelligence glow in all of the material form of their body, and it would emanate. And it would be the same with their ships as well. And in the inner earth encounters I've had when I've been down there, they live in these beautiful caverns, and it's rich with this, it's just imbued with this living, intelligent energy. You can feel it in the air. It's emanating from the ground. There are crystalline structures all over the place that it just glows from. It's just beautiful. And so as humans, we've been used to this environment of being in something where we have very little experience or perception of living energetics. It all just seems to be solid walls, metal, stuff, and that's how a human perception has been trained to think. Oh, there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of matter rolling around, bouncing off each other. But to me, the truth is that is simply the result of the game we've been playing. And it's a two-way game, because as we have descended in consciousness, so has the mirroring effect of how energy presents itself to us, because we have in fact been requesting high density because of the drop in consciousness. So everything has really compressed itself down, and suddenly you're now in a very limited world of very limited energy behavior attributes, or what I call physics attributes. So again, just to remind people, when I talk about physics, physics is a synonym for me for energy behavior. That's it. It's not the study of mechanical stuff. That's just one part of the spectrum of what energy can do when it takes a highly compressed form. But when you expand it out and look at it, it becomes something very different. Some of the experiences I've had when I've seen plasmic ships, or, sort of morphic ships, these are beautiful, pulsing, moving. It's just incredible to watch. It really is. And I couldn't begin to describe them. That would be a whole conversation with itself. But the bottom line is, I feel, is that living energetics is the world that we're moving into. It's becoming aware of energy as a living, conscious aspect of the same field that we are a part of as well. And the more, as the compression comes off, and as the fluidity and living energetics start to become more apparent, now it's interactive. Now it really changes very quickly as we change our focus, rather than in a high state of compression where it doesn't seem to change. It's like, wall, move, please move. And it doesn't do anything. It just stays there, So there is, and when you look at texts of the past, with masters who came here who were able to, manifest on their palms, do incredible things with their focus. They had an access, an openness to source intelligence where that living intelligent field could suddenly change and release the compression, bring back the living intelligent qualities into things, and even imbue that back into them. And that is really another aspect, a really exciting aspect, the way I see it, of where humanity is moving. Because imagine a world where you don't need to get a technological instrument to do X, Y, Z. You can simply focus and lens your intention, and your environment will morph to what it is that you're requesting. That is what we're heading, stepping stoning, towards, I believe. So yeah, so in the nest of the plasma aspect, so plasma is the first real apparent step into that world of living energetics, and it goes higher. So it goes beyond the plasmic state into other states where suddenly the structure itself disappears and becomes much more field-like, so you can't even really recognize that there are real structural individuated components there. So it's this beautiful continuum of different energy states. Under one side is high compression, limited behavior, mechanical behavior. And as you move towards a more higher, more evolved energetics, it becomes living, it becomes self-aware, self-organizing, all the other qualities that David Bohm mentioned. And going beyond that, it starts to become this beautiful amorphic living field. And one of my experience, or many experience with the ships that I would bilocate to, is the living consciousness of the ship. You would be there, and the whole field of the ship was living and interactive. This is so different from what we are used to. It's such, paradigm shift is probably even a little bit too soft a phrase to use. It's a really big jump because we've been so used to the structural, compressed, mechanical properties of energies. And that it's so exciting because that is what is going to change. So I hope that kind of encompasses a lot of what you were hoping
No, no,
to
it's
cover.
beautiful, David. And, I can see in my mind's eye this kind of luminescence that, we have
Yes,
minimally in
yes,
our biophotons.
yes,
You can see the red
yes,
speck glow around some people, that aura, but there's a kind of luminescence or a radiant presence that I think
yes,
start to really accelerate, and we'll become much more of a kind of spectrum of light of which we are just one part, but also
yes,
that we are co-creating with it in every moment. There's a constant co-creation feedback loop that isn't one way, it's always that
yes,
interaction with with the
yes.
field out there. And so that really emphasizes something I talk about a lot, which is our focus and our attention. Where are we putting our focus
Mm,
and intention in terms of what we want to
yes.
create, not necessarily as an event but as a frequency.
Yeah.
Is it peace? Is it joy? Is it gratitude?
Yes.
And that
Yes.
frequency will mirror back to us. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, and I'd love to add that was a really a lovely explanation, and I'd like to sort of add in that as well because one of the key things you mentioned there was our focus and our perception. Now, to me, one of the important things that has confined our perceptibility to what we appear to see as dead mechanical structure, it's part of the lowering in consciousness, the confinement of consciousness we've experienced. Now, as we evolve and as we expand and we're raising up quite innately because of everything that's going on, what's actually happening in a big way is our perception. Our perception is really expanding and opening up because the stuff that I'm talking about, it's not that it isn't there and it just comes in once, things take off or whatever you want to call it. You are actually sitting in a rich field of multidimensionality right now. And the reason why you're not able to perceive it properly, or, in the most part, is because our perception energetics have been tuned and focused to a very particular small bandwidth of, the dimensional or vibrational energetics environment, if you want to see it that way. Now, what that means is it's like, just an analogy with one of those old radios, when you tune it up and down, you go to different stations. We've been tuned to such a low station, all we can hear is this. And you'd swear, that's the whole world. This is all I hear, there's nothing else. Truth is, all those other frequencies and layers of reality are simultaneously overlaid, but you haven't tuned to them yet. And that's the thing. So it's really about and this is the thing that I say to people, and that the Arcturians said to me, a while back when I was really getting a little frustrated with an invention they were trying to get me to create, and I was trying to be too heady about it. And when I relaxed, then they said, and I know I've said this before, but it's a really good reminder, is that you're going to find that living with the perception of your heart intelligence is going to be a world apart from living from the perception of your intellectual intelligence. And people tend to associate intelligence with intellect, and that, they're one and the same. Well, intellect is one facet of intelligence, but the core of intelligence is here. And this is what I believe humanity is coming back to, and this is where our perception is going to change. Because by practicing coming down into the core intelligence, the level of energetics or physics I've been able to perceive, and this is another thing, because people tend to say, and love has these beautiful qualities, it's soft, it's kind, it's compassionate, but it's also the master physicist, it's the master chemist, the master artist, the master linguist, it's everything that you could possibly ever want. It is the most beautiful energy, and it's the creator of all. I really want to remind people of that, especially, the scientists and engineers out there that might be thinking, oh, hang on a second, this is getting a little bit airy-fairy for me. Well, the truth is that, the source intelligence, which we give it a name, we call it love. But love is simply a word that points to the source intelligence. It is the master intelligence of all. It is benevolent, it is kind, it is compassionate. But it is also the ultimate physicist, the ultimate maker of, everything and anything, And it's a purely creative energy as well. All new things have to come from the source intelligence. It's that which does it. And we'll come on to that later, because I know you want to move on with that subject. But essentially, just to really bring the point here is that when you learn to align yourself with that core source intelligence within, you call it your higher self, you call it the heart of your soul, the sacred heart, whatever you want to call it, suddenly your level of perception is going to change. You're going to be able to perceive things, feel things, sense things, intuit things, see things that you never could before. That certainly happened to me, and I'm not joking when I say that. That really was very, very palpable, the difference. And I've been able to see things that they said you simply will not see using your intellect. When you use your intellect to do things, you're going to reach a wall, you're going to reach a ceiling. Because the mind itself is a beautiful instrument, but at the moment it's a structural device, and it can only perceive in the same nature with which it operates. And so its level of perception has an inherent limitation to it. But if you really want to see the very deep and meaningful energetics, the living energetics behind things, you need to go into the core. So yeah, that really is something I feel is a very important message to help people with, for sure.
Fantastic, David. And the reason, from my point of view, I feel your work is just right on time, is if I'm looking at this picture astrologically, it's a hugely concentrated, focused period of acceleration in humanity's evolution. These next few months in particular, there's so many convergences that I've banged on about in various videos over the last sort of 18 months or so. Whether you're looking at, cosmology, astronomy, astrology, or teachings, physics, whatever we're looking at. There's this incredible convergence happening right now. And so from your point of view, are you also seeing this as a convergence of very accelerated evolution that we're right smack bang in the middle of right now?
Yes, I do. And it's got many facets to it, one of which is this shift in perception, the offering of source intelligence for humanity to come back into heart intelligence and heart perception. And it comes with it so many different paradigms, because the old, as we know it, has been very much sort of founded, predicated, whatever you want to call it, on structural energetics, where things were just controlled into place and control structures upon control structures and so on. Because force is just the application of pressure with, as an alternative to creative intelligence, living intelligence, manifestation, being morphic with energies, all the powerful things that come with being a creator being. So those groups of beings or humans that have chosen to go into that control, that paradigm, it's all about force, it's all about pressure, those kind of things. And, big systems have been created out of that whole paradigm. And now what we have is, now the time has come where humanity is making this transformation. And the energetics of right down to the very subatomics themselves are changing, which means their behavior is going from dead mechanical structure to living energetics, which means that control starts to dissolve away and becomes, just literally becomes a nothing burger, essentially, and it's all about, part and parcel of showing humanity, you see, you are leaving the control paradigm. I always think it's funny because if you look at the word control, I always say to understand the kind of the characters that operate in it is in the last 4 letters, and to understand what it's really about is in the first 3. So
Well said.
So I always say it's quite funny that word's put together. But anyway, so, what is really happening, I feel, is that humanity is going through these step-by-step movements to learn to just let go of any belief system, anything that you have, any energetic that you hold, which aligns you with the control paradigm, with the high densified, structured paradigm. What is it that's keeping you there? And you mentioned perception before and what we focus on. That's really, really important. Because when we continually focus on those same concepts, that is what we are cyclically recreating within ourselves. It's a bit of a feedback loop. And so, the ability to take a step back, relax, breathe rhythmically, as the team say, or however you feel you want to do it, and breathe yourself into your center again, is something that I would really encourage people to quite often practice doing, even just like a few minutes here or there, whenever you catch yourself throughout the day being a bit stressed or moving out of your center. And one way I would say, and we spoke about this before, recording, is for anybody wondering, well, how do I know I'm out of center? Well, while you're in your center, you're at peace. You have a very crystal clear focus, but the focus isn't a grip. It's not like, yes, I'm focused on stuff, I'm really in that zone. That's not what heart-centered focus is about. Being in heart-centered focus is a crystal clear, open clarity of seeing the whole thing. You're not gripping on anything. You're not holding on anything. You're in a very neutral, very peaceful, centered observation of things. So if you find yourself getting too involved with things outside, getting really caught up in sort of, anger or fear, those kind of things, those are all indicators that you are now away from your center. Because to give you an example, when I've been up with these very advanced beings, when I look at them, these are really centered beings, And when you look into their eyes, it's just peace and grace. There's not an ounce of push, pull, control, fear, any of that. They are so in such a crystal clarity of perception state, but it involves no grip, no control. And they have a full spectral perception of you. Because the more you let go of grip, if you think about it, when you're gripping on something, you are confining your focus to what you are gripping. You have locked your focus onto the grip, what you're gripping onto. As you relax, just like the compression coming off of energetics, suddenly your perception opens up, and now you have a very full spectral perception energetically. And so that's another thing. People talk about having a high degree of focus. Well, to me, you can lens your focus, but make sure that you let go, if you're doing that, because it's going to, to come back into your center where you have that full perception clarity again, because the type of focus that humanity has used over many, many years, hundreds, thousands of years, is in fact a focus of control and grip, And I remember one being once saying that, what has developed in humanity is that the mind's version of understanding is control. The heart's version of understanding is compassion. It's very different. So,
I'm so encouraged to constantly, through many lifetimes, defer to the
yes,
external. And that's
yes,
far away and
yes.
become very agitated. And what I've often suggested to people is stick post-it notes all over your house, bathroom,
Yeah.
in cupboards, the walls, saying, "Are you at peace? What is
Yes,
Are you at
yes.
peace?" And that's how, when you're in the run of your day, you can
Yeah,
catch yourself. And if you're not at peace, find your easiest default method of booking that
yes,
instantly. Is it simply closing your eyes and watching your breath? Is it candle
yes.
anything? Is it listening to a particular kind of music? I mean, I've had a very fast moving day today. And before I pressed the button to connect with David, I knew I had to just go out and put bare feet on the grass. I had to
Yes.
decompress before
Yeah.
I engaged because I was just too buzzy. There'd been too much happening with myself. But we were also talking, David, about the importance, and it's again something I've talked about endlessly, is living from the inside out, not the outside in. Because
Yes,
we have
yes, yes,
so
yes.
much drama, so many events, so much
Mm.
dynamic unfolding, so many of them in the coming weeks and months. And our habit has been either someone's coming to save us, or my goodness,
Yes,
in
yes,
town,
yes.
or whatever. And you were really emphasizing what is most important is this
Mm.
state of being, which, again, I talk
Yes.
about a lot in my work. So, what would you like to share about that? Because I know it's so crucial, and your teams really wanted to bring that forward as an important message today.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's a really good topic. One of the things, as you were saying that my teams were and my higher self was showing, was an image. If you imagine a sphere, a little bit like this image here, this beautiful glowing sphere of the sun here. Imagine yourself as that being, now glowing with energy, and that's the state of being purely centered in the full spectrum observer state. And now suddenly you start arranging and putting your focus on different things. So when you focus, it's like a portion of that light comes out as you see this little beam here that's coming out. Imagine that would be your focus on something over here. Suddenly your energy moves in that direction. You're lensing your energy and directing it somewhere. Now imagine over layers and layers of lifetimes that you have brought forward from previous ones to this one, and all the series of trainings to be so ultra focused on everything outside you have. Suddenly you've got tons of these rays of energy pouring out. It's depleting you, you know. It's really pulling you. It's a little bit like they were saying, a little like puppet strings. All these strings come out of you, and people can get sort of moved around in all sorts of different directions. But if you come back into center and you learn to understand that instead of being reactive, which is having all those things all over the place being pulled by different areas of what you're focusing on, instead it's learning response ability, your ability to respond and choose how and if, when you direct your energy, if at all, but always to remain in center and then choose, how do I wish to direct my energy? Nothing outside is going to dictate or tell me what I'm to focus on. I will choose what I focus on, how I focus on it, if I focus on it at all. And that's a big thing, because humanity from the word go has been trained outside, 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 with nothing on the inside. That's one of the biggest tricks to be played, that people actually reinforce themselves. And this is not meant in any kind of judgmental way. I've gone through this process myself of realizing how I was doing it as well. What we have learned to do is be so ultra focused on everything outside, to plan, to move, to put things into place, these kind of things, that we have gone through a process of almost completely forgetting the wellspring of the unlimited source intelligence we have inside us, and being so interconnected with what we focus on that, we're playing this jostling game all the time with things we focus on, trying to keep one step ahead or maintain an upper hand, whatever you want to call it, And again, to draw an analogy with these beautiful beings that I've encountered, they have this sublime centeredness. You know, you could go all crazy in front of them. They will just smile at you. You know, it's just, you know,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. They could be screaming, shouting, spitting in front of them or something. They will just simply smile at you. They don't have that kind of outer attachment focus that we have cultivated or been taught to cultivate. You know, they have such an inner centeredness, and they can choose how they apply their energy, where they focus their energy, if they focus their energy, you know, and it's such a beautiful state of being. So they have this beautiful sort of vessel around them within their bodies, and the fields around that are just filled with source intelligence. And they're so good at how they apply that. And I can feel them as saying there's one message they would really love to encourage humanity to really begin to ponder on and play with. You know, what do you do with your energy? You know, are you really making the choice to focus on something? Or are there belief systems inside you that are reacting and causing you to just innately focus on things without even making that choice to do so? And they're saying that the more that you practice the simplicity, and they're saying this is not complicated, and they're saying, laughing, they're saying this is one of the things that you humans are so good at, is complicating things. You know, people want, you know, they think the more sophisticated and complicated it is, the more cooler it is, or whatever, you know. But the truth is, as somebody who's been in those areas of, you know, complex analytics and all that kind of stuff, I can say firsthand that you will find the most beautiful, blissful, deeper, most profound truths in simplicity than you ever will in complication, you know, having gone through, you know, those sides. Now, as you center within yourself, things are going to come into your awareness. You'll start to become aware of deeper truths without even efforting. You won't even analyze or work anything out. You will just know, because the knowingness is already there. You're letting through source intelligence and all that comes with it. You know, that's one of the beautiful things. And so, you know, there is a great deal, I feel, that the teams are saying, what they're noticing, there's a great deal of outward focus on what's going to happen here, what are they doing, when are the ETs coming down to save us, and a whole slew of different things. And the message I can feel, it's the Arcturians coming through now, and the Pleiadians there as well. They're saying, we are in a state of delight waiting to meet you. But there is a transitional process that humanity must go through where you learn to be centered. They're saying very clearly, we are not your saviors. You are here to elevate yourselves and to show that you can elevate, and you most definitely can do that, they're saying. You know, they're saying, do not fool yourselves into thinking you cannot do this. Most definitely you can. And you've done it many times before, they're saying. They're saying the reason why you are here is because you were selected. You know, it's like, I've heard this before, and I feel they're mirroring this. There are so many beings that wanted to come here, but the ones that were, you know, sort of allowed through the gate, so to speak, to incarnate here were the ones that have had the experience, the ability to break these stuck systems before and evolve themselves. So if you are here, you are one of them, you know. And so they're saying, you know, shed the veneer of self-doubt. It's nonsense, they're saying. It really is. Just allow yourselves to feel the simplicity, and they're saying, don't think it. That's one of the big missteps that a lot of people do. They try and think themselves into, yes, I'm this, yes, I'm that. They're saying, we ask you to feel the truth of this. Don't, you know, invent a mirage of, you know, what you think you are, because what you really are, you can't think. You know, it's beyond your ability of your beautiful mind to be able to comprehend. But if you can sit, and the more you practice connecting with here and just relaxing, surrendering to your center, you know, practice. It's really getting your whole system to just gently, step by step, realign itself back with that soft, powerful, infinite center. You'll get realization after realization in each step after each step as you do that. And they're saying something is going to happen. We're not going to tell you what. We're not going to spoil the surprise, they're saying. But they're saying the reason why they're not going to is because it will spoil the beauty of the experience. You know, something profound awaits in the heart center of each human. And it's coming forward, and they're saying, when you connect with this, when you really surrender into this, life is going to change permanently. It is something, it's interesting. These are the first sensations I'm getting of this. I mean, I think they've been showing me in bits before, but not quite in this forward way before. And they're saying this is for everyone, including me as well. So, okay, is there anything else you'd like to share on this? Not for the moment. And but they're saying that, you and everyone listening to this message will be utterly delighted. And, they're saying they've noticed, we've talked about that word delight before. And so they're saying the word delight will take on a whole new meaning. The sensation of delight in itself, they're saying that is what they live in each moment, all the time. They never fall from that delight. And it is a delight in being alive. It is a delight in existence. It is a delight in creativity, in the ever unfolding and expansion. They're saying what you have found yourselves temporarily caught up in at the moment will seem like an entire nonsense when you feel this state within inside you. And they're saying, we know that might seem to many people right now to be a sort of, so I'm not sure what word you used there, more of a sensation they're giving me. It's more like, people are saying, oh, but things are so tough. And they're kind of more or less, that's what they were kind of suggesting. They're saying, when you allow yourself peace to really settle down and just relax those attached focuses on all these outer goings on, something is going to come up inside you. It's going to present itself to you very bit by bit as you're ready for it. And when you finally merge into that and really align with that, just magical things are going. I'm getting a slight sensation of what it is now, but it's almost like an entire paradigm of knowing is going to come into your being. And then you'll look at everything that's going on and you're just going to burst out laughing. They're saying it's,
Halfway there already, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And, you're going to see it for what it is in terms of the true energetics of what's been going on, and all of the facades of, all of the heavy weight of fear and anguish and all the other emotions that all of us have, one time or another attached to things going on. Will just quickly fade away.